Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Build America, the national construction podcast that's capturing and sharing the very heartbeat of the industry. I'm your host, Kerry Smith Buck, owner of Construction News and Review. No doubt you have heard plenty about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but have you ever wondered what that looks like out in the field, on construction job sites, and among members of specific project teams? I know I have, and we are in for a treat today because our guest, Kiara Fortson, is DEI Project Implementation Director for ArchKey Solutions, and she's going to really talk through this issue with us. We're excited to have her. ArchKey Solutions, by the way, is one of the largest privately held trade and installation facilities companies in the U.S., and they specialize in electrical, technology, and other specialized systems, design, builds, and installations. Kiara, we're so glad to have you here. Welcome to Build America.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure, honestly. Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Absolutely. We'll just dive right in. And I did want to mention that Kyra has more than a decade of DEI experience in different industries, including construction and others. In fact, if you could share for just a bit, Kyra, about your background and how you got into the DEI work within the construction sector specifically, we'd love to know.
Yes, sure. As you mentioned, I've been in the DEI space for 10 years now. And I started out right out of college working for a nonprofit organization, the National Diversity Council, and that was my first introduction into DEI. When I was in college, there wasn't a curriculum that focused specifically on DEI. There wasn't a degree that you could get that was focused on DEI. I think the closest were human resources certifications and things like that. So this was a semester before I graduated where I found this organization, and I fell in love with DEI because I didn't know that people cared so much about other people. And that's something that I have done since I was a girl. And so I've loved it. And I've just trailblazed from there. So from there, I've worked in different industries: luxury automotive, financial technology, manufacturing, or construction adjacent, with my time at an elevator company. And this last year, I actually pivoted into construction after the death of my 3-month-old daughter, Fallon Mariah. And I wanted to try something different because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. And my career in DEI has been so tumultuous with the political climate and with companies deprioritizing DEI in the fields that I was working in. And I wanted to do something completely different. And when an opportunity became available for me to become a DEI manager for a small family-owned construction firm here in Georgia, I took full advantage. So I initially joined as their DEI manager, and my focus was heavily on employee engagement, assessing job site culture, assessing the internal culture, and working closely with their supplier diversity and community engagement lead, whom I'm still very good friends with. But it was very difficult to navigate the family culture of the business, and it became increasingly difficult to drive change internally. There was just a lot of behaviors and antiquated ideas around what construction looked like and who's supposed to be in construction and things like that. And it was just very difficult to drive change. And what I did was I tried to drive change in all the ways that I possibly could. And much of that, with so much resistance internally, was partnering with the community and supplier diversity lead. And that is where I became, within this last year, became very much so interested and a huge advocate for DEI externally facing for construction. He was working with a lot of community businesses and or community leaders and small business owners, and helping align them with opportunities and making them aware of different construction opportunities at the GC. And I was like, this is really empowering. I didn't know that there was a focus on this. Like, I'm a small business owner myself outside of what I do for ArchKey. And I didn't know that this was a thing. I didn't know there were people who focused on those efforts. And so it was super exciting for me. And I knew that with my passions for it, my experience with working with this individual, and again, my 10 years of experience across DEI holistically, that this would be a really good fit for me. So here I am at ArchKey. I was super transparent about my tenure or lack thereof in the construction industry. But what I do think I have is, again, the specialized DEI experience, my passion, my intention, my project management strengths and all of those things that make me a great fit for this role. So it was happenstance. It wasn't
Awesome.
planned, but I'm happy that I'm here.
We're happy you're here too. And for anyone joining us later that doesn't know, DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and would love to hear how you take those goals and objectives for driving change and how you take them from a macro level at the top of the company or the leadership culture, and how do you implement them at a worker level or project level, especially in construction where we are as such a time pressured, safety driven, just compressed schedule and just all the challenges that go with construction, period. How do you move this through and have support to move it through so that it impacts each and every worker on a project?
So that's a really great question. When I started in DEI, it was very apparent that change comes from the top down. It's really supported from the bottom up, but it should be driven from the top down. And I'm able to successfully implement DEI because our CEO, Steve Stone, is very intentional, very passionate, very transparent about the goals we as a company have. DEI is not an option. While there may be a dedicated resource who is responsible for DEI or who stewards DEI, DEI is everyone's responsibility. And so I really love that it's driven from the top down. It was made very clear to me throughout my interview process what the goals were and why they were looking for someone to fill this very important position. And I talk often, or I've spoken about often, the 3 I's to successful DEI implementation. And I can honestly say that I have all 3 of those here at ArchKey. And those 3 I's are intention, investment, and integration. Without those 3, it is incredibly difficult to drive any type of change, but specifically within DEI, when you're working so closely with people's belief systems, their morals, and the political and social climate, like all of those things play a really huge part. And so I've been successful because all of the leaders that we have, my supervisor, Ron Mortimer, he is phenomenal. And I've not felt unwelcomed or unsupported. And I think also the culture plays a part in that. So we have a supportive culture, we have supportive leaders. And just with them being able to share the messaging around what we're doing, why it's important, and that everyone has to be on board, everyone else feels that responsibility too. So it's not just me. I'm happy to spearhead all of our initiatives, but it's really a team effort amongst everyone within ArchKey, especially on the project teams.
Let's talk through some specific member of your design build or your installation project team and give me just to take it down to the everyday level. What would be example of an initiative that you were implementing and how does that roll out so that everybody's on board?
So right now, I'm creating the infrastructure for successful DEI implementation. So what that looks like is creating a playbook that we can use on a national level so that everyone knows when and how to engage DEI projects. So there are some general contractors, clients that have DEI requirements, and I'm using DEI. I personally don't like to refer to the subcontractors or the work that we're doing as DEI, only because there's usually negative connotation that comes along with someone mentioning diversity or DEI. So they are classified as underrepresented business enterprises. And so helping to change the language around who we're working with, like that helped. But working with, so the playbook is a huge part of that. So during the early pre-construction phases, when I'm brought in and made aware of the DEI requirements, I work very closely with the project teams to create project-specific inclusion plans for their specific project in their area. So you have to be very sensitive to the communities that you're going to build in. A lot of times we think we are, and as a collective, the trades, we think that we are going into an area and everyone's goal is to make it better than when you found it. However, sometimes people don't feel as though their communities were bad to begin with, or they don't
Sure.
feel like the changes needed to be made. And so some people are being displaced when we have to put up these large facilities, whether they're data centers or hospitals or any large facility. A lot of times when we're going, something has had to happen in that area for that to be possible. And sometimes it's
Right.
displacing people. And so I think it's being very, like, that allows us to be very sensitive, the project specific inclusion plans, that allows us to be very intentional and create a system that works. for that specific project. And on a very real level, I'm brought in very, very early on once we are made aware of any types of requirements, and I share or I do my research in that area and find out everything that I need to know regarding demographics, and we're able to implement it that way. Without the structure, which is something that I'm continuing to work on, without that structure, it will be difficult to navigate. But what I'm creating will help with our tracking and reporting, and also our business to business mentorship and all of the things that we are offering through our supplier diversity program.
Where do you think, just as examples again, to bring it down to, I know you're still working on the playbook, but what would be like the displacement was a good example. If someone's building a hospital, but they have to demolish or take property by eminent domain or something, and all the engagement that goes on there to educate people and give them choices. What would be another example that you think, or an area, a page in the playbook, if you will, that would be another common situation that comes up that ties into construction projects in addition to that?
A page out of the playbook, I would say that, again, is really important is how to connect with the community. So through outreach events, that's an initiative that we work through, whether it's something that we host ourselves or something that we collaborate with a client or a general contractor to do. And that's where we get a space, whether it's a church or a small business development center or a hotel conference room or something like that. And we do the groundwork to educate the community on what we're doing and invite everyone to come and be a part of it. That's a really successful initiative that I've done both in my former role and in this role that I found to be incredibly impactful.
Oh, I'm sure. And as far as DEI goes, if when I first saw the topic, I was thinking more, I wasn't thinking about the community as much as I was thinking about the communication with the workers on the projects. Is it like a separate strategy or initiative to make sure that underrepresented persons or groups are part of the project team, like back from when bids are put out for the landscaper or the general contractor or the asphalt company? Is that what talk to me a little bit about DEI from that avenue of those who
Yeah.
are actually putting the projects together?
Yeah, so a lot of the clients, they give us sometimes the guidelines by which to follow. So many times they have their own percentages of women, minority, apprentices, the different aspects of the project team or the labor workforce. They have different requirements for that. At this moment, we don't have mandatory minimums, but I have seen in some places where there may be like a 5% of a total contract value to be, I'm sorry, awarded to small businesses or underrepresented business enterprises, and to have a certain percentage of the total workforce be women, minority, and apprentices. And so a lot of that, which is the whole, like, the importance of the project specific inclusion plan, is that specific. It varies based on project. And what we do early on, we have workforce development efforts. We are a national union signatory, so we work very closely with the local IBEW and NECA chapters to identify workforce. We work with workforce development community organizations. Like, I can give you an example of one, like Construction Careers Foundation. We work with the JATCs in different states and things like that. So we tap into all resources that we have available, even some that we research on our own, to make sure that from both a workforce perspective and a UBE perspective, we're able to ensure diversity on the project.
Awesome. What impact do you think, that this type of DEI strategy has made on the industry, and what kind of impact do you think it will continue to make moving forward? As the months and years progress, do you think the type of impact it has will be the same, or will it reflect a growing, changing construction society and communities at large?
I think that is absolutely going to change. And I think it's going to change because the demographics of our country are changing. And with that said, that's why we do so much work in terms of introducing the trades to the next generation of skilled leaders and professionals, because we do know that. And our industry, I'm sure everyone can attest to this, with labor shortages and the lack of skilled workers and people, the entrance versus the exit rate of electricians specifically is pretty eye-opening. It's pretty alarming. And so I think the onus is on construction companies, regardless of the trade, to do their due diligence and reach out and make the trades more appealing to the next generation and skilled adults that are interested in, like, career changes and things like that. So I think we I do think it was going to change the impact that we're making. I think we're creating the blueprint for other electrical contractors specifically to do this work in a very meaningful way. And our approach is unlike any that I've seen. I can't say that I've connected with any other electrical contractors that are doing business to business mentorship for smaller electrical contractors, whether we have a partnership or not. That is fascinating. And I'm actually really enjoying that. And it will change. It has no choice but to change because of the labor shortage and the changing demographics. So I'm hopeful that some of the pressures that smaller contractors experience when they engage with larger primes, that they don't have those experiences with us. So I'm very sensitive to like the needs of the businesses. I help perform the needs assessments for the mentorship and just really get a pulse on the other smaller contractors so that we can help them scale, because what we want is for them to be able to work on a project with us, but beyond that, to go on to be even more successful or to continue working with us on projects. The last thing we want is to put someone in a negative situation financially or have them sign on to a project that will put them under. As a unit, both pre-construction, leadership, everyone is very sensitive to that. And because of what our industry and trade is facing, we take it very seriously.
I was thinking back to probably was 25 years ago 25 years ago when they completed or were building the one of the major bridges over the Mississippi River, the Stan Musial, and just how many, if we look back, it's just anecdotal, I apologize for that, but we look back over the minority contractors, how many are still in business today? And there are too many that aren't. And I feel like, I wondered what you think about, I feel like the public sector is continually doing a much better job of what you're saying, and private sector as well, but just mentoring those businesses and making sure that a project that was meant to be an opportunity for them doesn't wipe them out.
Exactly. That's a really big thing that I've experienced in my short time of being here at ArchKey. I am responsible for the outreach and finding these UBE contractors and pre-qualifying them to work with us and pretty much hand holding them in the most nicest way possible. That's the best way that I can describe it. It's like hand holding, but it's super positive, but making sure that they don't fall between the cracks in pre-qual, or that I help mitigate some of the concerns they have with the pre-qualification process, which can be very daunting to a small business. We are very much putting everything in place for the support of smaller businesses. And I'm sorry, I believe I lost track of the question in explaining that,
No,
but
no,
I got
you're good.
excited to talk about I got excited to
No,
talk about that.
you speak to the middle of it. Yeah, because I'm just saying just opportunities that I feel as the decades move on and that public and private sector organizations are more conscious of the fact that smaller underrepresented contractors do need more business advice. They need financial advice. They may be a carpenter who all of a sudden formed an LLC and now they've bid on a part of a bridge span or something, but they're people maybe that need that business acumen to be able to make sure that their business is sustainable through and beyond the project.
You mentioned a point earlier, which is I got lost in getting excited to talk about
It's
it,
okay.
but the business is going out of business. So in my research, that's where I was going with this. I found that there's so many small businesses or minority businesses, UBEs in general. When I find them in these databases and things like that, when I go to connect with them, they're already out of business, even if they were just
Mm.
established. And that's alarming to me. But I know that a part of that is, to your point, the lack of structure in their own businesses. So what I'm finding in doing the assessments for some may not have a safety plan, but the safety
Mm.
plan may only need to be a sheet of paper that says, I educate my team on safety. We have daily, weekly safety meetings or whatever the case may be. They may not have a risk management strategy. And a lot of these things are very easy to attain to a large contractor, but to a smaller contractor who's just getting their footing, it's not so easy for them. And they don't know how simple it could be. They're just worried about what's susceptible to everyone else, as opposed to, hey, how can I just meet these qualifications? And what we do, we assess their business through the original pre-qual process. However, if there's somewhere that there's a hiccup, they're automatically routed to me so that I can help them get what they need in order to fulfill pre-qualification. And I'm really excited about that because, again, sometimes it's something very small that could prevent
Sure.
a contractor from successfully completing pre-qualification. And I like to explain to people pre-qualification is not pass or fail, or not with ArchKey, it's not. Sometimes you might get a rejection letter or you never get to talk to someone on the other end. When you go to pre-qualify with ArchKey, I am going to look at your pre-qualification. Like at every step, I will get a notification. I have the resources internally. I'm like, we are all aligned internally on what to do with our UVE contractors as they go through pre-qualification. And I honestly think it's just caring. We have to actually
Sure.
care about who we are wanting to do business with, care about the success of our business and their business, and just be willing to step up and help. And I think everyone, and I can say this from my own experience being here, like I've never felt alone or on an island, always someone I can call and talk to. And that is a game changer. Having
Oh,
that
yeah.
psychological safety at work where you're not afraid to fail or not afraid to ask a question or not afraid to say something wrong or out of place. Like we don't have to deal with the hierarchical nonsense
Hmm.
that I've dealt with at so many other organizations. Like I don't experience that here. I feel included. I feel like an equal. I feel like my voice is heard. My contributions matter. I'm valued, and I like, because I am experiencing that, I also extend that to any of our community partners or potential trade partners.
That's so very well said. And yeah, because we all learn and grow together, no matter who we are and what our position is. Oh, this has been so inspirational, Kyra. We've been talking with Kyra Fortson, who is DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Project Implementation Director. I almost didn't get that out for ArchKey Solutions. And I believe ArchKey is headquartered in St. Louis. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have offices. So our national headquarters is in St. Louis, Missouri, but we also have offices on the West Coast, in the Central region, and on the, it's not considered East Coast, forgive me, but we have offices in DC, Minneapolis, San Jose, and St. Louis. And I work
Oh,
remotely
that's
out of
fantastic.
Atlanta.
Fantastic. We've been delighted to have you with us today, Kyra. And if y'all have any questions or want to contact Kyra, you'll find ArchKey. I believe it. Give us the URL for your website.
It's www.archkey.com.
Great. Thank you for your time and for your passion and for your expertise in just helping all these boats rise with the tide when it comes to underrepresented construction partners. What a calling, and I can tell you embody it so well. We're really glad you're with us today, Kyra.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Forward to it.